When the PS5 launched back in November 2020, it cost $499 for the disc version and $399 for the digital. That was it. Standard console launch, nothing crazy. People complained about the price at the time, but looking back, that was a bargain. Fast forward to right now, March 2026, and Sony just announced yet another price hike, effective April 2nd. The disc edition is jumping to $650, the digital edition hits $600, and the PS5 Pro, Sony's supposed mid-cycle premium upgrade, is now sitting at a borderline criminal $900. $900 for a console. Let's do the math. From $499 in 2020 to $650 in 2026, that's a 30% increase on the standard model alone. 30%. And that's not counting the Pro, which has gone up even more aggressively. Now here's the part that should genuinely bother you. The S&P 500, one of the most reliable wealth-building tools in the world, averages around 10% growth per year. Some years it crushes it, some years it drops, but over a 5 to 6 year stretch, you'd be pretty happy with 30% gains. The difference is, when your stocks go up 30%, you made money. When your PS5 goes up 30%, you just paid more for the same box. You got nothing extra. In fact, you got less, because the value of that console is only going down the closer we get to the PS6. And to top it all off, this isn't a one-time thing. Sony already raised prices by $50 in August 2025, so it hasn't even been a full year since the last increase. 2 significant hikes in under 12 months. That's not a price adjustment, that's a pattern. To understand why this is happening, you've got to go back to 2020, because that's when everything started breaking. The PS5 launched right in the middle of COVID-19. Launch events were canceled, stock was immediately hit by a global semiconductor shortage, and it took years for the console to become readily available. Remember trying to buy one back then? People were camping out, paying scalpers double the retail price, using bots just to get one at MSRP. Sony couldn't keep up with demand, and on top of that, the chips needed to build the console were becoming harder and harder to get. Then, in 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. That led to out-of-control inflation rates, which triggered the first PS5 price increase across Europe. Sony shielded the US market from that one, probably because the Xbox was still competitive enough that they didn't want to hand Microsoft an easy win. But by 2025, there was no more hiding. The PS5, Nintendo Switch, and Xbox Series X all saw price increases in 2025. This isn't a Sony problem anymore. It's an industry problem. So why is Sony actually doing this? They gave us a corporate statement, something about continued pressures in the global economic landscape, which tells you absolutely nothing. So let's translate that into plain English. There are 3 main reasons, and they all pile on top of each other. Reason 1. AI is eating the chip supply. This is the biggest one, and it's not talked about enough in gaming circles. DRAM and NAND prices surged significantly in early 2026 due to tight supply conditions, mainly because the massive expansion of AI infrastructure worldwide is consuming large portions of the global high-performance memory supply. Game Informer. Every AI data center being built by OpenAI, Google, Meta, Amazon needs massive amounts of RAM and high-speed storage. The same RAM and high-speed storage that's inside your PS5. These tech giants have essentially unlimited budgets, and they're buying chips by the billions. Sony? Sony is competing for the same parts to build gaming consoles. They can't win that bidding war. RAM and SSD prices have been driven up by as much as 500%, squared tech in some cases. That's not a typo, 500%. And when your component costs explode like that, something's got to give. Reason 2. Tariffs. Rising inflation, ongoing geopolitical tensions, and increased tariffs have all contributed to higher production and distribution costs. GameSpot. The PS5 is manufactured and assembled in Asia, primarily in factories that rely on global supply chains. When the U.S. government imposes tariffs on imported electronics and components, the cost of making and shipping every single unit goes up. Sony doesn't absorb that. They can't afford to. So it gets passed directly to you, the consumer. And here's where it gets genuinely worrying for the long term. In previous generations, the cost of video game hardware went down over time. That was the norm for decades, CTV News. You bought a console at launch, and within a year or two, it was cheaper. You could recommend it to friends and family as an affordable entry into gaming. That era is over. We're now in a world where a gaming console appreciates like a luxury item, not a mass-market product. Poorer households, those making under $50,000 a year, only made up 19% of gaming hardware buyers in recent quarters. CTV News. Gaming is becoming a hobby for people who can afford it, not everyone. And that should scare Sony, because the whole reason PlayStation became a cultural phenomenon was that it was accessible. The PS1, PS2, PS3, these were things regular families could eventually afford. A $650 base console with $80 games and an $80 a year PlayStation Plus subscription is a different conversation entirely. And this probably isn't the last hike. CG Magazine. There's no end in sight for the AI chip race. Tariffs are still evolving, and the PS6 is coming. And if the PS5 is already at $650, what on earth is that launch going to look like? Look, I get it. Sony is a company. They're not a charity. When their costs go up, their prices go up. That's business. But the speed at which this is happening, 2 hikes in under a year, a 30% increase since launch, a Pro model nearly hitting $1,000, that's a turning point. Gaming used to be something almost anyone could get into. Console gaming, specifically, was the affordable alternative to expensive PC gaming. That gap is closing fast, and if nothing changes, if AI keeps hoarding chips, if tariffs keep stacking, if Sony keeps finding reasons to raise prices, we might be looking at a future where consoles cost as much as mid-range laptops, and only a fraction of the audience can afford to follow.